Did this game jam pick the correct winner? Well, I intend to find out. This is the ScoreSpace SpeedJam from last August of 2023. The game jam was recently revealed to me through a YouTube comment on one of my videos covering Ludwig's game jam, because the theme for this one is Foddian. If you don't know what a Foddian game is, allow me to explain. The genre is named after Bennett Foddy, who is the creator of a game called Getting Over It. It's a game where you control a man in a cauldron who wields a hammer, and your task is to climb up a mountain. The controls are super unique in that the only way you can move your character is by swinging your hammer around. This made the game incredibly challenging, as the mountain ahead has falls so punishing it makes your blood boil.
No! Oh my God! No!
This spawned a new genre of games focused around a long interrupted climb paired with a unique control scheme that provided a tough and addicting challenge for the player. And I happen to be an expert in this genre. So using my expertise, I wanted to experience every single game in the game jam to see if anyone came up with a good new concept for a Foddian game. And so, I played all 84 entries in the jam to find out if the jam's overall winners were actually the best Foddian games. The Foddian genre is one of the hardest type of games to get right, and with this jam's length being only 3 days of development, almost every single game was lacking in certain qualities that a well-rounded Foddian possesses. With that being said, let's start off with the top 5 games that the game jam judges ranked as the winners. Starting with the number 5 overall ranked game, we have Red Bandana Adventures by Top Mopal. This game was basically just a normal platformer. You have this bandana bro who has a very familiar movement kit. You can run, jump, wall slide, wall jump, and then use a rope to swing off any ceiling and even jump out of it to gain even more height. It's very basic stuff, something you would see in most 2D platformers. Even though the movement was easy, it had its quirks and wasn't entirely fluid. However, that isn't the issue I had with this game. It's actually the map design that lets this game down. In this game, falling doesn't seem to hold any real weight or dread because of how easy the map is. The map design doesn't complement the movement mechanic at all. It's like the movement and map design were designed completely separately. While the character did move around and carry momentum, nothing about this game screamed Foddian apart from having one level and it being a platformer. I ended up beating the game in 3 minutes. The number 4 overall game was called Kind Mr. Kidney and the Tower of Pain by Genie. This one felt promising. However, the control you had over the character was so hard to get the hang of. Your character basically walks on his own without you inputting a button. The only control input you have is the spacebar. Spacebar makes the character jump and sprint forward in the same input, meaning if you instinctively hold space to jump, the character will rapidly jump and sprint forward in the air, smashing into the walls. It's an incredibly bouncy and floaty game, so before you can even think and adapt, you're bouncing back and forth off walls, falling back to the bottom. I was having to train my brain to tap jump space because it gives you the same amount of height without sprinting forward into the walls. But the change in speed and precise platforms of the map matched with the bounciness of the character made this game a tough playthrough. I made it to the 5th screen up, and the music actually dynamically changes, adding in notes as you get higher. But Jump King screen changes in an auto-moving game is just cruel, because you're just blind jumping into a new screen, not knowing if you should tap or hold spacebar, and it's so unforgiving. I would suggest reworking the map design to better support your character's movement and ramping up the difficulty a little more organically. Every good Foddian starts off easy to teach the player and then ramps up the difficulty over time. I give this game a pass though. It's a great idea but wrong execution. Having jump and sprint on the same keybind is tough to wrap my brain around, but I was improving over time, so who knows, maybe I just gave up too early. I ended up quitting on this one because it was more frustrating than fun at the end of the day. If you want to do the auto-walking movement mechanic in a Foddian style game, check out a game called Step by Step on Steam. This game really feels like you had full control over the character even though he's moving on his own. This is in part due to the ability to slightly control your speed in midair. It also really has great map design that supports the movement. It's a great example that this game can take some notes from, even if the controls stay the same. Moving on to the number 3 overall game in the jam, we have Nebulic by Prion Disease and Michael. This game had an incredibly cool concept. A gravity-based Foddian where falls pull you towards the center of the space environment where a black hole lies. Kinda reminds me of Planet Cave from Ludwig's game jam, where the game is circular and gravity is pulling you towards the center of the screen. Except this game is controlled by clicking the mouse to shoot off in a direction that your circle is pointed. However, you can't control the direction of the aim, so sometimes you're just pointed in the complete wrong direction and can't really progress. This really confused me. It really felt like you should be able to aim where you're going next, but maybe the point is to use the gravity momentum to swing around and slingshot your way to the top. But if that were the case, then why is the map design practically empty? They do give you an extra boost to gain distance, but without aiming, this one just kind of felt like a lost cause. There's really great sound design that has the music slow down and speed up relative to your distance from the black hole. Visually, it's also great. The space environment is fantastic and the idea is there. It's again just slightly off on the execution. Sometimes you just can't even see where the next planet to jump to is, so you're just blind jumping into empty space hoping there's another planet to latch onto. Also, the orb doesn't really keep its centripetal force around the planet, so physics-wise, it's a bit off when you're trying to fling off planets. Again, decent Foddian idea, just some bad execution. The number 2 game in the jam is called Gooing Up by Steve Is Meow. The game gives you a little ball of goo that can shoot explosive rounds out of its body that will allow you to propel yourself upwards using the force of explosions off surfaces in the map. It's controlled by WASD to roll left or right, and then it makes your mouse cursor a crosshair for you to aim the shots that come out of the goo's body. However, the movement is super trial and error, relying on explosion physics to ascend. There was some super odd map design here with great visuals, but then there was also some really well thought out sections that force you to switch up your gameplay. However, other sections just felt like there was no intention to how the dev wanted the player to navigate the level design, so it was a bit back and forth. But the movement felt super inconsistent and finicky, which is not the best for a Foddian speed game. Ideally, you have consistent movement that's hard to master paired with complementary map design, but the movement in this game was just awkward and floaty. However, I did notice myself improving over time, but at the very least, this game might be one that I can see fitting into the top 5. And finally, the overall winner of the Game Jam, as picked by the judges, was a game called Foolish Fish by Nacho Del Castillo, Sarah I, Yavi, and Viva Orlando. This game looked amazing, and everything worked flawlessly. The map design was Foddian, and the difficulty was paced nicely. However, the movement mechanic gameplay was way too straightforward. This game is essentially a point-and-click adventure that gives you a line that shows exactly where your fish is going to fly. The only thing that you have to skillfully master is judging the momentum that your fish will have when exiting the water and ascending to the next grassy platform. This makes every jump just a guess and check game, meaning once you know how to execute a jump, there's almost no chance you're ever going to miss that jump again. There's really no skill involved here. It's like barely even a movement mechanic because all you do is point and click and the game moves for you. It's a very well made, polished, and fun game, but it's missing the core gameplay that defines what a true Foddian really is: skill-based movement mechanics. So, the whole point of this video is to pose the question, did this Game Jam pick the wrong winner? Well, I think my opinion on the matter should be obvious by now. Absolutely. Foolish Fish just lacks the true nature of what a Foddian game is, because it's essentially a solved game. Once you know where to click, the game is beatable without even breaking a sweat. But if Foolish Fish shouldn't have won the Game Jam, then what game should have won? Because all the other top 5 were also lacking in Foddian design, and were for sure not nearly as polished as Foolish Fish was. Well, after playing every single entry this Game Jam had to offer, I decided to rank my own top 5 based on how good the developers' Foddian idea executions were. But first, some honorable mentions to touch on. These were games that were fun but not too Foddian, or actual Foddians that had something good going for them but just executed way too poorly to be considered top 5 in my opinion. First, we have Nebulic and Kind Mr. Kidney, which we already talked about why they missed the mark, but the first honorable mention goes to Slippery Subterranean Cave Under the Sea by No Face. The movement and momentum was great, apart from the inconsistent wall jump bounces and lack of air strafing. Also, the map design was extremely hard from the get-go with no fluidity. It just needed to be more intuitive, fluid, and paced better, but everything else felt really solid, and it even had this funny taunting snowflake man that trolled you when you fell really far. Next is Diving Under It by Omagerio. This game lacked a little bit in the movement. I would look at Boxman's Struggles control scheme to improve on it, otherwise it's just frustrating when you're playing it. You feel like you don't have enough control over your character. But great design otherwise. I really liked Fagoto, I don't know why, but it definitely was way too hard to control. Galactic Canoe is lovely, just not really Foddian because you're able to essentially control yourself in the empty spaces of the river. And also it controlled kinda weirdly. Lovely game though. Foddy Ropey Doo wasn't Foddian at all, but it was kind of fun. Mothman was alright. It had getting over it like hammer control, but you could also jump as well. The hammer wasn't slippery at all, so it was super OP. Also jumping with the hammer mechanic was OP. Fun little janky game though. Shooty Shooty Clack Bang was just a worse version of Pumpkin from Ludwig's Game Jam. Good idea, just wrong execution. And last honorable mention goes out to Momenthorn by Edka. This game's graphics were incredibly simple and the game lagged like hell, but it was Foddian, it had a movement mechanic, and honestly, the map design was pretty hype. Nice work here, especially that final leap of faith to swing all the way back to the top, which I failed. That shit was hype. And now, time for my official top 5. After playing through all 84 entries, these were the best 5 Foddian experiences that I found from the ScoreSpace SpeedJam. Coming in at number 5, we have Fall Queen by Aliab. Originally ranked number 13, this game makes the bold choice of being sort of a reverse Foddian, meaning that the idea of falls is actually the game bouncing you upwards with your goal being snaking back and forth between rooms in order to fall to the very bottom. This game controlled very similarly to Jump King, where you can face left and right and jump, with the only difference being that you can't walk. To avoid any confusion, when changing screens, the developer even added the ability to look down a level. The game starts out very simple, with stagnant trampoline obstacles that you have to time your jumps over, but slowly ramps up the difficulty with walking enemy trampolines and even flying enemy trampolines. Eventually, there are moving blocks you need to traverse with a whole floor of trampolines under you if you fall, and for that matter, I think the difficulty is paced really well. Overall, this game was a lot of fun, with some falls luckily only placing you one floor higher, and other falls helplessly chaining trampoline bounces up multiple screens. With all these added up, I think this game creates a wonderful Foddian experience that I had a great time playing, even if it's an unconventional Foddian where falling is actually the goal. Very nice work here. Number 4 takes us back to Gooing Up by Steve Is Meow. For everything I said bad about the game previously, this game's odd control method of shooting explosive bullets to propel yourself upwards is a mechanic that can be learned and chained to some sort of fluidity. The level design is paced pretty well, and the sections that do have intention, like the ones where you need to dodge the walking robots and jump from platform to platform, were difficult but fun to pull off. Pair that with great graphics and effects and nice sound design with no control issues, and Gooing Up takes the number 4 spot in the top 5, where it was originally placed second. The number 3 spot on my list goes to River Climbing by Ethan Nellis. Originally placed 12th, this game takes place at the bottom of a river. You play as a balding man who is floating in a tube with nothing but a stick in his hand. Using that stick, you must rotate and make the vertical climb against the current by using the leverage of the stick to swing yourself upstream. Huge getting over it vibes. I really love the idea here as it's very Foddian in nature. With the setting of the river, there's huge potential to add mechanics like waterfalls, animal obstacles, or even a riverside town section or something you need to go through. My only issue was the fact that the mouse doesn't get locked into the borders of the game, meaning sometimes I would be flicking my mouse to propel myself upwards and the cursor would leave the window, making me lose control of the character. But other than that, I would love to see this game be further developed, because it could very well be something special with some improved physics of the water. Great stuff here. Number 2 goes to a game called Bouncing Blob by Diamondshine Page. Surprisingly, this game got ranked 21st overall, but it was such a great Foddian experience. You play as this green booger man who bounces around freely on his own, but using your 2 arms, you can stretch them out and grab any surface and use your bounciness to swing yourself up the map. The game had a surprisingly long map, with the difficulty ramping up nicely. Eventually, you'll get to moving obstacles where you'll need to use the motion of the objects to help yourself swing upwards, and to be honest, I had a blast playing this one. Impressive work for only 3 days to make this. I got so far up the map, I was just thinking, when does it end? That was until I brutally fell pretty far down and had to make the climb back up. From there, I kept making simple mistakes that I only blame myself for and not the game. That is a really important thing that a Foddian developer needs to make the player feel. These games are supposed to be frustrating, yes, but if you can successfully make the player feel frustration in their own ability to beat the game, rather than being mad at the game itself, you've succeeded at making a good Foddian. Not to mention, swinging around with this guy was a ton of fun, making this game a hard one for me to stop playing without completing it. And finally, coming in at my number 1 spot, the true winner in my eyes of the ScoreSpace Foddian Game Jam is Ice Course of Course by KZHHHHT. This one impressed me the most out of all the submissions. At first glance, it's a very simple hand-drawn graphic game. It's a top-down perspective where your goal is to make it through the level to these gray elevator squares and hit space to ascend upwards. The game controls by having the square follow your mouse cursor. The further you move the mouse away from the square, the faster the square will move to try to catch up with the mouse. But the catch is, the camera moves with the direction you're headed, so the square can never sit still on your mouse cursor. The square's speed combined with the slippery surface you're on creates this experience where you're navigating these precise platformed levels by constantly controlling the momentum of the square's movement. One of the big themes of this game jam was to utilize momentum in your game's movement mechanic, and in my opinion, no game did it better than this game does. As you go up, there will be these icy courses that will become increasingly difficult to navigate. The further you ascend, you'll start to notice that you can actually see the previous levels underneath the level you're currently on. If you end up falling off the path, you will land in the exact same spot that the levels underneath are displaying, so saving yourself from a big fall is often possible and can be calculated. The only area this game suffers in is its pacing. The level design is a bit difficult from the start. I would have liked to see maybe a bit more of a covered surface on the first few levels, or something more simple to ease the player in and not make every bad fall go straight to the bottom. But honestly, I didn't even notice it at the time because I was having so much fun. This game has super fluid movement that's both challenging to control but simple to get hooked by, and trying to master this game and traverse these precise icy platforms all while having the awesome visual trick to make it look like you're getting higher and higher in the air was an impressive experience. Falling and being able to quickly get right back into the action to ascend even higher made this game very addictive to keep going. Not to mention, if you hit spacebar away from an elevator, you have the ability to jump, making clearing gaps and hitting skips a possibility. Overall, a creative, innovative, and insanely fluid and fun Foddian experience, even if it looks like a third grader hand drew it in Microsoft Paint. In my opinion, these are the best 5 Foddian games from the ScoreSpace Game Jam. But my judgment was a bit different from the actual criteria. I was going based on what games gave me the most fun Foddian experience. But the actual criteria highlighted every aspect of game design. There were scoring categories for theme, aesthetics, gameplay, and sound design, and all those combined ratings are what ranked the winners for this jam. And honestly, it makes total sense why Foolish Fish came out on top. They made a very polished, flawlessly controlled game with normal map design that, on paper, ticks all the boxes for what a Foddian is. They also smartly used the momentum of the fish's swims to hit jumps when surfacing from the water. But in terms of raw gameplay and true Foddian experiences, my opinion on the ranking cannot be swayed. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I know how difficult game design can be and how much work goes into it. A 3-day time limit is definitely not enough time to make a well thought out Foddian game, so I'm super impressed with all the submissions I played here. I apologize if I was a bit harsh on some of the games, but I had to tell it how it is. Don't let some idiot YouTuber discourage you from creating more works of art. Game design takes a lot of talent, and I have the utmost respect for anybody who takes the time and effort to code and design games. And besides, my opinion at the end of the day doesn't matter, because who knows? Maybe your next game will will be the greatest gaming experience of all time. Thanks for watching.